return that split Toronto. Kawhi Leonard is coming back to Toronto. But this time, the city is not celebrating with one voice. Some fans see the return of a legend, the man who delivered the only championship in Raptors history. The man behind the shot that bounced, paused, and dropped into basketball immortality. The silent superstar who walked into Canada for one season, broke every doubt in front of him, and left with a finals MVP trophy in his hand. But others see something much more dangerous. They see a 5-year-old star with a long injury history. They see a massive trade package leaving town. They see Brandon Ingram gone, Gradey Dick gone, multiple draft picks gone, and a young Raptors timeline suddenly being bent around a player whose best memories in Toronto happened 7 years ago. And that is why this story is not just about Kawhi Leonard return. It is about whether the Raptors are chasing another championship or chasing a ghost. The deal sent shockwaves through the league. The Clippers, unwilling to commit to Kawhi long-term, decided to move on. Toronto stepped in with a bold offer, bringing the Klaw back to the same city where he became untouchable. On paper, it sounds like destiny. A former finals MVP returning to the franchise that still treats him like basketball royalty. But the NBA is never that simple. Because behind the nostalgia, there are real questions. Can Kawhi still carry a contender through a full season and a deep playoff run? Can his body hold up when the games get heavier? Can Scottie Barnes continue growing while sharing the spotlight with a superstar who has always operated on his own terms? And can a young Raptors locker room handle the same pressure that veteran championship group survived in 2019? That is the uncomfortable part nobody wants to say too loud. The last time Kawhi arrived in Toronto, the Raptors were ready for disruption. Kyle Lowry was a veteran. Marc Gasol understood sacrifice. Fred VanVleet was fighting for respect. That team had scars, maturity, and enough toughness to absorb Kawhi's quiet intensity. This group is different. This group is younger, hungrier, still forming its identity. And now, suddenly, everything changes. So the question becomes simple but terrifying. Did Toronto just reopen its championship window, or did the Raptors mortgage their future for one last dance with a legend? Because Kawhi Leonard does not return quietly. He brings history with him, he brings expectations, he brings pressure. And whether Toronto is ready or not, every possession, every missed game, every Scottie Barnes reaction, and every playoff moment will now be judged through one massive question. Was bringing Kawhi back genius, or was it the mistake former Raptors voices warned everyone about? If you are watching from Toronto, Los Angeles, New York, or anywhere around the world, comment your city below. And if you believe Kawhi can bring the Raptors back to the NBA Finals, press 1 in the comments. If you think Toronto just made a dangerous mistake, press 2. Don't forget to subscribe, because this story is only getting started. The trade that changed everything. The moment Toronto pulled the trigger, this stopped being a rumor and became a franchise-defining decision. Because this was not a small move. This was not a safe move. This was not a team adding one veteran piece at the edge of the roster and hoping he could help in May. This was the Raptors taking their young core, their draft capital, their flexibility, and their emotional history with Kawhi Leonard, then pushing all of it into the middle of the table. Brandon Ingram was gone. Gradey Dick was gone. 2 first-round picks were gone. A pick swap was gone. 2 second-round selections were gone. And in return, Toronto brought back the most important player in franchise history. That sounds powerful. It also sounds dangerous, because the Raptors have done this before. In 2018, they traded DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and draft capital for Kawhi. At the time, people called it cold. Some called it ruthless. Some wondered if Masai Ujiri had just betrayed the face of the franchise for a 1-year rental who did not even want to be there. Then Kawhi won the championship, and history changed the conversation. But 2026 is not 2018. This version of Kawhi is older. This version comes with more mileage, more medical questions, and a longer record of missed games. And this version of the Raptors does not have the same veteran foundation waiting for him. That is what makes this trade so fascinating. Toronto is repeating the same formula, but the ingredients are not the same. In 2019, Kawhi stepped into a team that already knew pain. Lowry had been through playoff failure. VanVleet had been overlooked. Siakam was rising. Gasol and Green understood exactly what championship sacrifice looked like. That roster was built to absorb a superstar who did not need to explain himself. This roster is still becoming something. Scottie Barnes is not just a role player waiting for instructions. He is the face of the next era. RJ Barrett still has something to prove. Emmanuel quickly needs rhythm, trust, and responsibility. The younger players need touches, mistakes, confidence, and growth. Then Kawhi walks in, and everything shifts. The offense shifts, the attention shifts, the expectations shift, the locker room temperature shifts. Suddenly, this is no longer a team trying to take the next step naturally. This is a team being told the window is open right now, whether the young core is ready or not. That is why this trade is so much bigger than one name. Toronto did not just trade for Kawhi Leonard. Toronto traded for pressure, and pressure does not care about nostalgia. The ghost of 2019. The problem with bringing back a legend is that the memory is almost always cleaner than the reality. In Toronto, Kawhi Leonard is not remembered like a normal star. He is remembered like a myth. One season, one championship, one shot that bounced on the rim while an entire country held its breath. One playoff run that turned a franchise from respected into immortal. That 2019 season still feels unreal. Kawhi arrived with questions everywhere. Could he stay healthy? Would he fully buy in? Was Toronto just a temporary stop before he left for Los Angeles? Could the Raptors trust a player who had just come through a messy ending in San Antonio? Then the game started, and the questions got quieter. He scored when Toronto needed calm. He defended when the moment required force. He walked into hostile arenas with the same unreadable face, the same heavy shoulders, the same cold patience. Philadelphia pushed him to the edge, and he answered with the first Game 7 series-winning buzzer beater in NBA history. Milwaukee had Giannis, momentum, and fearlessness. But Kawhi helped break that wall too. Golden State had championship DNA, but Toronto had the one player who could turn pressure into silence. By the end of it, Kawhi was no longer a rental. He was the man who delivered the parade. And that is why this comeback is so emotionally complicated. Raptors fans are not just reacting to who Kawhi is now, they are reacting to who he was then. They are seeing the jersey, the memories, the confetti, the roar inside Scotiabank Arena, the city packed shoulder to shoulder, the feeling that Toronto had finally forced the basketball world to look north. But the NBA does not reward teams for old feeling. It rewards timing, it rewards health, it rewards chemistry, it rewards honest decisions made before emotion takes over. And that is where the ghost of 2019 becomes dangerous. Because that championship was not just Kawhi. It was the perfect storm. It was Lowry's leadership. It was Siakam's leap. It was Van Vliet's confidence. It was Gasol's intelligence. It was Nurse's adjustments. It was a deep roster full of players mature enough to understand the mission. Kawhi was the ceiling raiser, but the foundation was already strong. Now, Toronto is asking a different question. Can one legendary player recreate a championship feeling with a completely different team in a completely different stage of his career, under completely different pressure? That is the trap. The memory says yes. The reality says prove it. What former Raptors really? Remember, for years, the championship made everything sound perfect. That is what winning does. It smooths the rough edges. It turns tension into toughness. It turns discomfort into sacrifice. It turns locker room friction into a story about how everyone came together when it mattered most. But the people who lived inside that season remember it differently. Kawhi Leonard did not arrive in Toronto trying to become the loudest voice in the room. He was not the teammate giving emotional speeches every night. He was not the personality pulling everyone together with jokes, long conversations, or dramatic locker room moments. He was direct. Give me the ball. I will handle it. That was the Kawhi experience. Kyle Lowry understood it better than anyone because he was the emotional center of that Raptors team. For years, Toronto had belonged to him and DeMar DeRozan. They carried the regular seasons, the playoff heartbreak, the criticism, the questions about whether the Raptors were good enough to ever break through. Then DeRozan was traded, Kawhi arrived, and Lowry had to accept that everything had changed. That is not easy. Lowry had to go from engine to connector, from face of the offense to the veteran who made the new star comfortable. His scoring dropped, his role changed, his best friend was gone. And the player replacing that friend was quiet, demanding, and almost impossible to read. Some teammates respected it, some struggled with it, because Kawhi's confidence can feel like leadership when shots are falling, but it can feel like isolation when teammates are standing open. His silence can feel like focus when the team is winning, but it can feel like distance when the locker room needs communication. His calm can be powerful, but it can also make others wonder what he is thinking. That is the real tension Toronto is now revisiting. In 2019, the Raptors were old enough, tough enough, and desperate enough to live with it. They did not need Kawhi to be warm. They needed him to be great. And he was so great that every uncomfortable adjustment became worth it. But this time, the team is younger. A younger player does not always process sacrifice the same way a veteran does. A young scorer wants touches. A young guard wants rhythm. A A young star wants confirmation that the franchise still belongs to him. And when Kawhi Leonard enters the building, everything naturally bends toward him. That is why former Raptors voices matter. They are not saying Kawhi cannot help Toronto win. They are warning people that greatness comes with a cost. And Toronto is about to find out if this team can afford it. The body is the gamble. The basketball argument for Kawhi Leonard is simple. When he is healthy, he is still terrifying. He can get to his spots without panic. He can rise in the mid-range when defenses take away everything else. He can punish smaller defenders, shoot over late contests, defend elite wings, and turn broken possessions into playoff offense. Even at 35, his skill has not disappeared. The footwork is still there. The strength is still there. The hands are still there. The ability to make a building nervous in the fourth quarter is still there. But that phrase changes everything. When he is healthy, that is the gamble Toronto just accepted. Because this is not just about what Kawhi can do in one game. Nobody doubts that. The real question is what he can do across 82 games, then through a brutal Eastern Conference playoff run, then maybe through another finals chase if Toronto gets that far. Championships are not won on highlight packages. They are won through availability, recovery, travel, contact, pain, and repeated pressure. And Kawhi's body has been carrying warning signs for years. The missed games matter. The knee history matters. The playoff absences matter. The careful management matters. The fact that every season seems to come with the same question, how much Kawhi will Toronto actually get, matters more than nostalgia wants to admit. This is where the deal becomes frightening. The Raptors did not trade for a cheap veteran. They traded real assets, they moved a leading scorer, they gave up draft control, they made a commitment that only makes sense if Kawhi is on the floor when the games matter most. If he is, the entire move could look brilliant. If he is not, Toronto has a problem that cannot be solved with emotion. Because an injured superstar does not just leave a hole in the lineup. He changes the entire structure of the team. The offense has to reset. Roles become unclear. Young players are forced to adjust twice, once when the star arrives, and again when he disappears. The front office loses flexibility. The fan base grows impatient. Every update becomes a headline. That is the hidden cost of betting on an aging star. You are not only betting on talent, you are betting on knees, recovery, timing, medical luck, and the hope that the body will cooperate long enough for the dream to become real. And that is why the Raptors' biggest opponent might not be Boston, New York, Milwaukee, or Cleveland. It might be time. Scottie Barnes and the timeline problem. Every part of the story eventually leads back to Scottie Barnes. Because before Kawhi Leonard returned, the Raptors' future was easy to understand. Scottie was the center. Scottie was the timeline. Scottie was the player Toronto wanted to grow with, build around, and eventually trust as the face of the next great Raptors era. That plan made sense. He is young, he is versatile, he can defend, create, pass, rebound, and impact games without needing to be a traditional scorer every night. Toronto had been slowly shaping the roster around his strengths, trying to find the right mix of shooting, ball handling, toughness, and secondary scoring. Then Kawhi came back, and suddenly the timeline got complicated because Kawhi Leonard does not enter a team as a background piece. He does not come in as a quiet mentor who only takes what the game gives him. His game demands space, it demands touches, it demands late clock possessions, it demands that everybody else understand when it is time to get out of the way. That worked in 2019 because the Raptors were ready to be practical. Lowry could sacrifice shots, Gasol could pass and defend, Danny Green could stay in his lane. Van Vliet could attack moments without needing the offense built for him. They all understood the hierarchy, but Scottie Barnes is not supposed to be a passenger. He is supposed to be the driver of Toronto's next chapter. That is where the tension lives. If Kawhi becomes the center of everything, does Scottie's growth slow down? If Scottie remains the franchise priority, does Kawhi get enough control to be fully effective? If both players share responsibility, can the offense stay clear enough in high-pressure moments? And it is not just Scottie. RJ Barrett still needs a defined role. Emmanuel quickly needs the ball enough to stay dangerous. The younger players need real minutes, real trust, and real chances to fail. A team cannot develop naturally if every possession feels like it belongs to the biggest name in the room. Still, there is another side. Kawhi could help Scottie. He could teach him how playoff possessions feel. He could take the hardest defensive matchup. He could carry scoring pressure late in games. He could give Barnes something young stars rarely get a proven champion next to him while he is still learning how to lead. That is the best case scenario. But the worst case scenario is colder. Scottie becomes stuck between eras. Too important to be secondary, too young to overrule a legend, too valuable to be wasted in someone else's final act. Toronto says this move is about winning now. But if it damages Scottie's future, the price may be much higher than draft picks. Why this could still work. For all the concerns, one truth remains impossible to ignore. Kawhi Leonard can still change everything. That is why Toronto made this move. When healthy, Kawhi is not just another aging star. He is still a playoff weapon, calm, physical, efficient, and dangerous when the game slows down. In the fourth quarter, when young teams panic and defenses take away the easy options, Kawhi can create a shot from nothing. That is exactly what the Raptors were missing. Toronto had toughness. They had youth. They had energy. But in the playoffs, energy alone does not win. You need someone who can take the ball, silence the building, and get a bucket when everyone knows it is coming. Kawhi gives them that. And defensively, the idea of Kawhi next to Scottie Barnes is serious. Two strong wings, two switchable defenders, two players who can make life miserable for scorers across the Eastern Conference. If their bodies, roles, and chemistry line up, Toronto could suddenly become one of the most uncomfortable teams to play in a 7-game series. There is also the emotional side. Kawhi has already won in Toronto. He knows the city, he knows the pressure, he knows what that fan base sounds like when it believes. Maybe this is not just nostalgia. Maybe this is a second chapter with real purpose. If Scottie grows beside him instead of shrinking behind him, if Quickly and Barrett accept their roles, and if Kawhi stays available when the games matter most, this move could still become a masterstroke, because sometimes one proven winner is all it takes to turn a promising team into a terrifying one. Why this could fall apart? But if this goes wrong, it will not fail quietly. A trade like this fails in headlines, injury reports, post-game interviews, and frustrated body language. It fails every time fans remember what Toronto gave up to bring Kawhi back. The first concern is health. If Kawhi misses time, the Raptors do not just lose a scorer. They lose the player their entire new identity is built around. When he plays, the offense bends toward him. When he sits, the young core has to reset. That constant adjustment can drain a team fast. Then comes chemistry. Winning hides tension. Losing exposes it. If Scottie Barnes starts looking passive, if Emmanuel quickly loses rhythm, if RJ Barrett's role shrinks, people will ask the same question. Did Toronto bring back a legend at the cost of its future? That is where the pressure becomes dangerous. Kawhi is trying to win now. Scottie is still growing into his prime. Those timelines can work together, but they can also pull the team in opposite direction. And because Toronto gave up major assets, there is no easy escape if the fit does not work. One injury, one bad losing streak, one awkward locker room stretch, that is all it could take for the mood to change. The Raptors did not just bring back Kawhi Leonard, they brought back championship expectations, and expectations can become heavy very quickly when the results do not match the memory. There are three possible endings to this story. The first is the dream. Kawhi stays healthy, Scottie Barnes keeps growing, the defense becomes elite, and Toronto turns into a real Eastern Conference threat. In that version, the Raptors look bold, not reckless. Kawhi becomes the bridge between the 2019 title and the next era. The second ending is the gray area. Kawhi plays well, the Raptors have big moments, but the team never fully fits. They win games, create excitement, maybe even make the playoffs, but fall short against a deeper, more balanced opponent. Then the debate begins. Was the swing worth the cost? The third ending is the nightmare. Kawhi's body does not hold up, Scottie's role becomes unclear, the young core loses rhythm, and the season turns into damage control. In that version, Toronto is forced to face the hardest question of all. Did they chase another championship, or did they chase an old memory? That is why this season matters. It is not only about Kawhi. It is about the identity of the Raptors. Are they brave enough to win now? Are they smart enough to protect their future? Can they honor the past without becoming trapped by it? The answers are coming. And once the games begin, nostalgia will not be enough. The real lesson behind Kawhi's return. In the end, Kawhi Leonard's return to Toronto is not just a basketball story. It is a lesson about risk, memory, timing, and the price of chasing greatness. The Raptors know exactly what Kawhi once gave them. They know the banner exists because they were brave enough to make an uncomfortable move. They know that championship teams are not built by fear. Sometimes, a franchise has to make the trade that scares everyone, absorb the criticism, and trust that winning will explain the decision later. That happened once. But wisdom means understanding that the same move does not always create the same ending. This time, Toronto has to be honest about everything. Kawhi is still brilliant, but he is not 27 anymore. Scottie Barnes is still developing, but he cannot be treated like a background piece. The young players need structure. The veterans need clarity. The coaching staff needs courage. And the front office cannot let nostalgia become a strategy. That is the real challenge. If the Raptors want this to work, they need more than Kawhi highlights. They need communication. They need role definition. They need patience. When the season gets messy, They need to protect Scottie's growth while still respecting Kawhi's greatness. They need to understand that a championship culture is not created by one star alone. It is created when everyone knows the mission, accepts the sacrifice, and still feels valued inside the room. That is the human side of this story. Kawhi should not be reduced to a risk. He is a champion who gave Toronto something unforgettable. Scottie should not be reduced to an obstacle. He is the future of the franchise. The young players should not be treated like expendable pieces in someone else's legacy. They are human beings trying to build careers, confidence, and identity. The best version of this story is not Kawhi taking everything over. It is Kawhi helping Toronto grow up faster without stealing its future. Maybe he brings another deep playoff run. Maybe he gives Scottie the lessons only a finals MVP can give. Maybe the city gets one more magical chapter with the player who changed everything. Or maybe the gamble becomes a reminder that even beautiful memories can become dangerous when a franchise tries too hard to relive them. Either way, Toronto made its choice. The Klaw is back. The pressure is back. The dream is back. Now, the Raptors have to prove this is not just a reunion. They have to prove it is a plan. If you believe Kawhi Leonard can bring another championship-level run to Toronto, comment 1 below. If you think the Raptors risked too much of their future, comment 2. And if you want more NBA trade drama, locker room stories, and behind-the-scenes breakdowns like this, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and share this video with another NBA fan.